My name is Cassandra Vale. I'm 28, and I thought I knew my family until my sister's wedding day shattered everything I believed about loyalty, love, and blood ties. What started as humiliation in front of 200 guests became the moment that exposed a web of lies spanning 15 years lies that would ultimately destroy the very people who thought they had destroyed me. The chair pull was just the beginning. Hey everyone. Before we dive into this absolutely wild family drama that still gives me chills, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if you're ready for a story about family betrayal, that'll have you questioning everything you think you know about sibling loyalty, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because this revenge story has more twists than a pretzel factory. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for the ending that left my entire family speechless. Growing up, Melissa was the golden child 3 years younger, but somehow always 3 steps ahead in our parents' affections. Where I was awkward and bookish, she was effortlessly graceful. Where I struggled with acne and braces, she glided through adolescence like a Disney princess come to life. Our parents, Robert and Linda Vale, never bothered hiding their preference. Family photos told the story Melissa front and center me, slightly blurred in the background. But I genuinely loved my sister. Despite the obvious favoritism, despite the constant comparisons, despite being told repeatedly that I should be more like Melissa, I defended her fiercely. When kids at school called her stuck up, I'd argue they just didn't understand her. When she needed help with homework, I'd drop everything. When she wanted to borrow my car, my clothes, my boyfriend's attention, I gave freely, believing that's what sisters did. The engagement announcement came 18 months ago during Sunday dinner. Melissa practically vibrated with excitement as she thrust her hand forward, displaying a stunning 3-carat diamond that caught the light like captured starfire. David proposed, she squealed, launching into the romantic details of his beachside proposal in Malibu. David Chen, successful attorney, marathon runner, and according to Melissa, absolutely perfect husband material. I'd met him twice at family gatherings, finding him charming but somewhat aloof. He had this way of looking through people rather than at them, as if constantly calculating something behind his polished smile. "We want you as maid of honor, Cass," Melissa said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I can't imagine my special day without my big sister by my side." I felt tears prick my eyes. Despite everything, she wanted me there in the most important role. Maybe I'd been wrong about the distance between us. Maybe this wedding would finally bridge the gap that seemed to widen with each passing year. The wedding planning consumed the next year and a half. Melissa threw herself into every detail with military precision, color schemes, floral arrangements, menu tastings, venue tours. She consulted Pinterest boards with thousands of pins, hired a wedding planner whose fees exceeded most people's annual salaries, and discussed table linens with the intensity of a UN peace negotiation. I participated enthusiastically, attending every dress fitting, every cake tasting, every vendor meeting. I helped address invitations in my carefully practiced calligraphy, organized the bridal shower, and spent countless weekends running wedding-related errands. When Melissa changed her mind about the flowers 3 times, I supported her. When she decided the original venue wasn't quite right and demanded we find something better, I helped search. The dress shopping expedition lasted 6 months. We visited 14 boutiques across 3 states before Melissa found the one, a stunning Vera Wang creation that cost more than my car. The day she tried it on, I genuinely cried watching her in the 3-way mirror. She looked ethereal, like she was born to wear that specific dress. "You're going to be the most beautiful bride ever," I told her, meaning every word. She smiled at me in the mirror, but something flickered in her eyes, something I couldn't quite identify. "Thanks, Cass. You're the best sister anyone could ask for." During the final month, the stress intensified. Melissa became increasingly particular about every detail, from the exact shade of pink for the bridesmaids' dresses to the font on the place cards. She snapped at vendors, reduced the florist to tears, and had several dramatic meltdowns about everything being ruined. I absorbed her stress, becoming her emotional buffer. When she panicked about the weather forecast, I researched backup plans. When she worried about her complexion, I drove to 3 different pharmacies, finding her specific skincare products. When she couldn't sleep from anxiety, I spent nights on her couch talking her through wedding logistics until dawn. Looking back, I realize how perfectly I played my role, the supportive older sister who existed primarily to make Melissa's life easier. I was so focused on being helpful, so determined to prove my worth through service, that I missed the signs of what was really happening beneath the surface of her perfect wedding plans. The first hint something was wrong came during the rehearsal dinner. The venue, an elegant country club overlooking rolling hills, buzzed with conversation from 60 of our closest family members and friends. I'd spent the day managing last-minute details, ensuring Melissa could focus on enjoying her evening. As maid of honor, I'd prepared a speech celebrating their love story, sharing carefully chosen memories that painted Melissa in a glowing light while keeping things appropriately sentimental. I'd practiced for weeks, memorizing every word to avoid the anxiety that always plagued my public speaking. When my turn came, I stood at the microphone, looking out at the assembled guests. Melissa sat at the head table in a flowing lavender dress, her hair perfectly styled, looking every inch the radiant bride to be. David sat beside her, handsome in his navy blazer, but his expression seemed oddly detached. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice steadying as I found my rhythm. "For those who don't know me, I'm Cassandra, Melissa's older sister and biggest fan." I launched into stories of our childhood, how Melissa always shared her Halloween candy with me, how she'd cheer me up after bad days at school, how proud I was watching her graduate valedictorian. The audience responded warmly, laughing at appropriate moments and nodding along with recognition. But as I spoke, I noticed something disturbing. Melissa wasn't smiling. In fact, she looked increasingly uncomfortable, shifting in her seat and exchanging glances with David that I couldn't interpret. When I mentioned how she'd always been the family's shining star, her jaw tightened visibly. Melissa has always had this incredible gift for bringing joy to everyone around her. I continued warming to my theme. Even as kids, she could light up any room just by walking in. "David, you're getting someone truly special. Thank you, Cassandra," Melissa interrupted, standing abruptly and taking the microphone. "That was lovely. Really." The forced smile she gave me made my stomach drop. Something was definitely wrong, but I couldn't figure out what I'd said to upset her. I'd been nothing but complimentary, focusing entirely on her positive qualities and their bright future together. Later, during cocktails, I approached her at the bar. "Hey, everything okay? You seemed a little tense during my speech." She turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, calculating, almost predatory. "Everything's fine, Cass. Just wedding nerves, you know," but her tone suggested anything but nerves. There was an edge there, sharp and unfamiliar. For a moment, I felt like I was looking at a stranger wearing my sister's face. David appeared beside us, sliding his arm around Melissa's waist with practiced ease. "Ladies enjoying the evening?" "Absolutely," I replied, trying to shake off my unease. "Tomorrow's going to be perfect." David's eyes met mine with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Yes," he said slowly. "Tomorrow will definitely be memorable." The way he emphasized that last word sent chills down my spine. But before I could analyze it further, Melissa pulled him away to mingle with other guests, leaving me standing alone at the bar with a growing sense that something was very, very wrong. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and surface-level conversations. Every time I tried to catch Melissa alone, she was suddenly needed elsewhere. When I attempted to corner David for a brotherly chat, he deflected with lawyer-smooth evasions that left me feeling more confused than before. As guests began departing, I helped clean up while Melissa disappeared early, claiming exhaustion. Our mother pulled me aside as I stacked chairs. "Cassandra, dear, you did wonderfully tonight," she said, though her tone lacked genuine warmth. "Tomorrow, just try to remember it's Melissa's day, okay? Sometimes you can be a bit much." The comment stung because I couldn't understand what I'd done wrong. I'd been nothing but supportive, helpful, and celebratory. Yet somehow I was being positioned as the problem. Driving home that night, I replayed every interaction, searching for clues about what had shifted. The pieces didn't fit together, but a nagging voice in the back of my mind whispered that tomorrow's wedding might not unfold the way any of us expected. The morning of Melissa's wedding dawned crisp and clear, perfect weather for what should have been the happiest day of her life. I arrived at the bridal suite at 7 a.m., arms laden with coffee bagels and emergency supplies for any last-minute crises. The energy should have been electric with excitement, but instead I walked into an atmosphere thick with tension. Melissa sat in front of an ornate vanity mirror, her hair half-styled, staring at her reflection with an expression I couldn't read. Three bridesmaids bustled around the room, her college roommate Jessica, our cousin Emma, and David's sister Catherine, but their chatter felt forced, like actors playing roles in a play they didn't quite understand. "Morning, beautiful bride," I announced, cheerfully determined to inject some joy into the strange mood. "Ready for the best day of your life." Melissa's eyes met mine in the mirror, and for just a moment I saw something that looked almost like guilt flash across her features. "Hi, Cass. Thanks for the coffee." The next 4 hours passed in a whirlwind of preparations. I helped lace Melissa into her stunning Vera Wang gown, the silk and beadwork catching the morning light streaming through tall windows. She looked absolutely breathtaking, a vision of bridal perfection that belonged on magazine covers. But something felt off about the entire process. Melissa barely spoke to me directly, communicating through the other bridesmaids or our mother when absolutely necessary. When I tried to help with her jewelry, she pulled away. When I offered to touch up her lipstick, she declined curtly. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked during a quiet moment when the others had stepped out. "You seem distant." She turned to face me fully for the first time that morning, and the look in her eyes made my blood run cold. It wasn't the loving gaze of a sister on her wedding day, it was calculating, almost cruel. "Everything's perfect, Cassandra," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Absolutely perfect." The ceremony itself unfolded like a fairy tale. The venue, a historic mansion with soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers, provided the perfect backdrop for Melissa's grand entrance. 200 guests rose as she walked down the aisle, a vision in white silk and vintage lace. I stood at the altar as maid of honor, watching David's face as he saw his bride for the first time. His expression was unreadable, no joy, no awe, just a strange blankness that seemed inappropriate for a groom seeing his beloved walking toward their shared future. The vows were beautiful, if somewhat generic. David spoke about partnership and commitment with the polished delivery of a man accustomed to addressing juries. Melissa's words were flowery and romantic, but they felt rehearsed, lacking the genuine emotion I'd expected from someone marrying her soulmate. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the applause was thunderous. Melissa's smile was radiant as she kissed her new husband, and for a moment everything seemed normal again. Maybe I'd been imagining the tension. Maybe wedding stress had made me paranoid. The cocktail hour passed smoothly, with guests mingling on the mansion's terrace while photographers captured endless portraits of the happy couple. I fulfilled my maid of honor duties, directing the receiving line, coordinating with vendors, ensuring everything ran seamlessly. Then came dinner and the reception in the mansion's grand ballroom. The space had been transformed into something from a dream, thousands of white roses, cascading linens, candles creating warm pools of light throughout the room. Melissa had achieved her vision of perfection. I was seated at the head table directly to the left of the bride. The placement felt like an honor until the meal service began, and I realized how isolated the position made me. Conversation flowed around me, but I felt strangely disconnected from it all. The trouble started during the toasts. Melissa's father spoke first, sharing touching memories of his little girl and welcoming David to the family. David's best man followed with humorous stories about their college friendship and bachelor party adventures. Then came my moment as maid of honor. I stood champagne glass in hand and surveyed the room full of expectant faces. I'd prepared different remarks than the rehearsal dinner speech, something shorter and more focused on their future happiness. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. As Melissa's sister, I've had the privilege of watching her grow into the incredible woman she is today. But as I spoke, I noticed something strange happening. Melissa wasn't looking at me with the warm appreciation I expected. Instead, she was staring at something behind me with laser focus. I glanced over my shoulder but saw nothing unusual, just the typical wedding reception scene. When I turned back, Melissa was whispering something to David. He nodded, once his expression grim, and then both of them looked directly at me with identical expressions of anticipation, malice? I couldn't tell, but whatever it was made my hands tremble slightly as I held my champagne glass. I wrapped up my toast quickly, suddenly desperate to sit down and escape whatever energy was building at that head table. The applause felt hollow as I took my seat, my heart pounding with anxiety I couldn't explain. That's when Melissa stood up, her own champagne glass in hand. "Thank you so much, Cassandra," she said, her voice carrying that same false sweetness I'd heard all morning. "Before we continue with the evening, I have something very special to share with everyone." She paused, letting the silence build while 200 guests turned their attention to her. In that moment, she looked absolutely radiant, but there was something predatory in her smile that made my stomach clench with dread. "You see," she continued, her voice growing stronger, "tonight isn't just about celebrating love. It's also about celebrating truth." And that's when everything changed forever. Because what happened next would expose secrets that had been hidden for 15 years, destroy the careful facade our family had maintained, and prove that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal. The real drama was just beginning, and I had no idea that I was about to become the center of a revelation that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my own life. "Truth," Melissa repeated, savoring the word like fine wine. The ballroom had fallen completely silent, 200 guests hanging on her every word. Even the catering staff had stopped moving, sensing the electricity in the air. I felt my mouth go dry as she continued. "See, my dear sister Cassandra has always been so supportive, so helpful, so willing to do anything for family." Her voice dripped with venom, disguised as affection. "But what she doesn't know is that David and I have been together for 5 years." The words hit me like a physical blow. 5 years. That was impossible. David had only been in our lives for 18 months. I looked at him desperately, expecting him to correct her, to laugh off some weird joke I didn't understand. Instead, David stood and placed his hand on Melissa's shoulder with the easy familiarity of a much longer relationship. "That's right," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the microphone system. "Melissa and I met during her sophomore year of college. We've been planning this moment for quite some time." My brain struggled to process what I was hearing. Planning what moment? The wedding, but they'd just gotten married, so of course they'd been planning. "You see," Cassandra Melissa continued, her eyes locked on mine with laser intensity. Remember when you introduced me to your boyfriend James 3 years ago? Sweet, successful James who you thought was going to propose? The bottom dropped out of my world. James. My James, who I dated for 2 years before he suddenly became distant and eventually broke up with me via text message. James, who'd broken my heart so thoroughly that I'd needed therapy to move past the devastation. James is David, Melissa announced triumphantly. David James Chen. He just goes by his middle name professionally. The revelation hit me like a tsunami. I stared at the man I'd known as David, and suddenly I could see it. The same deep brown eyes, the same crooked smile, the same laugh that used to make me feel like I was flying. But his hair was different, his style had changed, and 3 years of heartbreak had apparently clouded my ability to recognize the man who'd destroyed me. That's impossible, I whispered, though my voice caught the microphone and broadcast my shock to the entire room. James moved to Seattle. He's a software engineer. Actually, he moved to Los Angeles to finish law school, Melissa corrected with obvious relish. We stayed in touch after you introduced us at Dad's birthday party. At first, it was just friendly conversation. But then, she shrugged delicately. Love finds a way. I felt physically sick. The room was spinning faces blurring together as the implications crashed over me. James David had been cheating on me with my own sister. For how long had their relationship started while he was still with me? The breakup was hard on you, wasn't it, Cass? Melissa's voice seemed to come from very far away. All those nights crying on my shoulder asking what you did wrong? All those therapy sessions trying to figure out why someone who said he loved you could just disappear? The cruelty was breathtaking. She'd comforted me through the worst heartbreak of my life while secretly dating the man who'd caused it. Every time I'd sobbed in her arms, every time I'd asked her advice about moving on, every time I'd wondered aloud what I'd done to drive James away, she'd known exactly where he was and who he was with. But here's the really beautiful part, Melissa continued, clearly enjoying herself now. When we decided to get married, we realized we wanted you here to witness it. We wanted you to be part of our special day to help us celebrate the love that grew from the ashes of your relationship. The guests were completely silent now, their discomfort palpable. I could see shocked faces, people exchanging confused glances, a few individuals reaching for their phones to record what was clearly becoming a viral moment. In fact, Melissa said, reaching behind her chair, we have a very special gift for you. She pulled out a beautifully wrapped box and set it in front of me. My hands shook as I unwrapped it, revealing a photo album bound in white leather. The cover was embossed with elegant script, Our Love Story, David and Melissa. With trembling fingers, I opened to the first page. The photo showed Melissa and James David at what looked like a coffee shop, both of them laughing at something off camera. The date stamp read exactly 3 years ago, just 2 months after I'd introduced them. I flipped through more pages, each one a knife to the heart. Photos of them at restaurants I'd never been to, on trips I'd never heard about, at family gatherings where they'd apparently been secretly together while pretending to barely know each other. Then I reached a page that made my blood run cold. It was a photo of them in bed together, clearly intimate, clearly a couple. The timestamp showed it was taken 1 week before James broke up with me via text. We documented everything Melissa said, softly leaning close, so only I could hear. Every date, every kiss, every time we laughed about how clueless you were. We thought you might enjoy the memories. I looked up at her, this stranger wearing my sister's face, and realized I was seeing her clearly for the first time in my life. The golden child, the perfect daughter, the beloved sister, it had all been a mask hiding someone capable of unimaginable cruelty. Why? I whispered the word, barely audible. Her smile was razor sharp. Because you never deserved him. Because everything good that's ever happened to you should have been mine instead. Because I'm tired of pretending to care about pathetic, desperate Cassandra who thinks being helpful makes her worthy of love. The words hit harder than any physical blow ever could. This wasn't just about a man or a relationship. This was about years of hidden resentment, jealousy I'd never suspected, and a level of sibling rivalry so toxic it had poisoned everything I thought I knew about my family. But as I sat there humiliated in front of 200 people, something unexpected began to burn in my chest. Not devastation, though that was certainly there. Not heartbreak, though that was overwhelming. What I felt was rage. Pure righteous fury at the realization that these two people had orchestrated the most elaborate emotional torture I could imagine. And that's when I noticed something they clearly hadn't expected. My purse was sitting open beside my chair, and visible inside was a small recording device I'd brought to capture audio of the speeches for a memory book I'd planned to make for them. The device that had been running since the toasts began. The device that had captured every word of their confession. I reached for it slowly, my mind racing with possibilities. If they wanted to play games about truth and consequences, I was about to teach them that some games have rules they hadn't considered. Because what they didn't know was that their perfect revenge was about to become the foundation of their own destruction. As Melissa basked in her moment of triumph, savoring what she clearly believed was my complete humiliation, I felt something shift inside me. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by a crystalline clarity I hadn't experienced in years. These people had orchestrated an elaborate psychological torture session, but they'd made one critical error. They'd underestimated me. I carefully closed the photo album and set it aside, my movements deliberate and controlled. The recording device in my purse had captured everything, but that was just the beginning. As I processed their confession, pieces of a larger puzzle began clicking into place. "Thank you for that enlightening presentation," I said quietly, my voice carrying just far enough to reach the head table. Melissa's eyebrows rose slightly, clearly expecting tears or a dramatic exit. David James, whatever his name was, leaned back in his chair with the satisfied expression of someone who believed he'd won. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Before I respond to your generous gift, I continued, standing slowly and picking up my champagne glass. I have a few gifts of my own to share. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app, setting it on the table where everyone could see it was actively recording. "David, or should I say James, do you remember telling me about your student loan debt? The $150,000 you said was crushing your dreams of law school?" His confident smirk faltered slightly. "That was private between us." "You're right, it was private. Just like it was private when you asked me to co-sign a loan to help with your emergency medical bills 6 months before you broke up with me." I turned to address the crowd, many of whom were now leaning forward with rapt attention. "The loan I'm still paying off, by the way. $1,800 a month for the next 4 years. Melissa's face went pale. This was clearly information she didn't have. But here's the interesting part. I continued warming to my theme. "When I checked on that loan last month, because I'm very responsible about my financial obligations, I discovered something fascinating. The money wasn't used for medical bills. It was transferred directly to a down payment on a condo in Beverly Hills, a condo that's registered under both your names." Dead silence filled the ballroom. I could practically hear people doing mental math, calculating timelines and implications. "A condo you purchased 8 months before you broke up with me," I emphasized, "using money I co-signed for under false pretenses. Money that legally makes me a victim of fraud." David, I refused to think of him as James anymore, was now visibly sweating. "Cassandra, you don't understand the full situation." "Oh, but I do understand," I interrupted smoothly. "Because while you two were planning this elaborate revenge fantasy, I was doing something much more productive. I was healing. I was growing, and I was learning some very interesting skills in my new career. Melissa looked confused. What career? You work in customer service? I smiled for the first time that evening. Actually, I've been working as a private investigator for the past year. Turns out, having your heart broken by a lying sociopath gives you excellent motivation to learn how to uncover deception. The revelation hit them like a physical blow. I could see the calculation happening behind their eyes, the sudden realization that their carefully planned revenge might have some unexpected complications. Which brings me to my gifts. I continued, pulling out a manila envelope from my purse. First, for the groom, a complete financial investigation showing how you've been living off fraudulent loans, credit cards opened with false information, and money laundered through 3 different shell companies. I slid the envelope across the table to David, whose face had gone ash gray. Everything's been reported to the appropriate authorities, of course. The FBI's Financial Crimes Division is particularly interested in your creative accounting methods. But I wasn't finished. From my purse, I produced a second envelope, this one thicker, and for the bride, a comprehensive report on your new husband's other extracurricular activities. Melissa snatched the envelope, her hands trembling as she opened it. The first document was a marriage certificate. Not theirs, a different one dated 6 months ago showing David James Chen married to someone named Patricia Williams in Las Vegas. Congratulations, Melissa, I said sweetly. You just married a bigamist. The sound that escaped her throat wasn't quite human. She flipped through more documents, photos of David with another woman, bank records showing he'd been supporting 2 different households, communication records proving he'd been maintaining long-term relationships with multiple women simultaneously. The really beautiful part, I continued, borrowing Melissa's earlier phrasing, is that Patricia is 8 months pregnant with his child, a child he promised to support and raise, just like he promised to marry you in a commitment ceremony since he was waiting for his divorce to be finalized. David lurched to his feet, his chair clattering. Backward. You can't prove any of this is legitimate. Actually, I can, I replied calmly. Because Patricia hired me 3 months ago to investigate her missing husband who stopped coming home. Imagine her surprise when I showed her wedding photos from your engagement party. The ballroom erupted in murmurs and gasps. Phones were definitely recording now, capturing what was rapidly becoming the most spectacular wedding disaster in recent memory. But I had one more card to play. The biggest one. Oh, and Melissa, I turned to my sister, who was staring at the documents with growing horror. You might want to check your joint bank account. The one you opened for wedding expenses. Her phone was already in her hands, frantically accessing her banking app. The color drained from her face as she stared at the screen. Funny thing about con artists, I mused. They don't usually stop conning just because they find new victims. David emptied your account yesterday. All $43,000 of wedding money gone. Transferred to an offshore account that's probably already been closed. Melissa's scream of rage was audible throughout the venue. She spun toward David with fury that made her earlier cruelty look like child's play, but he was already moving, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. Security, someone shouted, and I realized several people had already called the police. Red and blue lights were flashing outside the windows as patrol cars pulled up to the venue. As chaos erupted around us, guests filming Melissa, sobbing, our parents demanding explanations, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The humiliation that was supposed to destroy me had instead revealed the truth about everyone I thought I could trust. But more importantly, it had shown me exactly who I really was. Not the pathetic, desperate woman Melissa had described. Not the victim David had tried to make me. I was someone who could take the worst betrayal imaginable and turn it into justice. The real revenge wasn't what they'd done to me. It was what they'd done to themselves by underestimating the woman they thought they'd broken. 6 months later, I'm sitting in a coffee shop across from my therapist, Dr. Sarah Martinez, reflecting on how dramatically my life has changed since that unforgettable wedding day. The woman who walked into that ballroom expecting to celebrate her sister's happiness was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more authentic. The legal aftermath unfolded exactly as I'd predicted. David, whose real name turned out to be Marcus Davidson with at least 3 other aliases, was arrested that night on charges of bigamy fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. The FBI investigation revealed a pattern of financial crimes spanning 7 years and involving at least 12 victims across 4 states. He's currently serving a 6-year federal sentence with additional charges pending in Nevada and Texas. Melissa's fall from grace was equally spectacular, though her crimes were more emotional than financial. The viral videos from the wedding, captured by horrified guests and shared millions of times across social media, destroyed her carefully cultivated image overnight. Her employer, a prestigious marketing firm that valued reputation above all else, terminated her contract within days. Our parents, faced with undeniable evidence of their golden child's cruelty, struggled to reconcile the daughter they'd worshipped with the monster she'd revealed herself to be. But perhaps the most satisfying consequence was how completely her social circle abandoned her. The same friends who'd enabled her narcissism for years suddenly found themselves questioning every interaction they'd ever had with her. Wedding guests who'd witnessed her calculated cruelty spread the story far and wide, ensuring that everyone in our community understood exactly what kind of person Melissa really was. The financial recovery took months of legal wrangling, but I eventually recouped every penny David had stolen from me plus damages. Patricia, his pregnant first wife, received a substantial settlement that ensured her child would be supported despite his father's incarceration. We actually became friends through the whole ordeal, bonding over our shared experience of surviving his manipulation. My private investigation business exploded overnight. The wedding videos had inadvertently showcased my skills in a way no marketing campaign ever could. Suddenly, scorned spouses, suspicious business partners, and families with secrets were beating down my door, desperate for someone who could uncover the truth with the same surgical precision I'd displayed that night. More importantly, I discovered I genuinely loved the work. There's something profoundly satisfying about giving people answers, about shining light into dark corners where deception thrives. Every case reminded me that I wasn't the only person who'd been betrayed by someone they trusted, and that knowledge transformed my pain into purpose. The relationship with my parents required more complex navigation. Once the shock wore off, they attempted to rebuild bridges, finally acknowledging the favoritism that had shaped our entire family dynamic. It wasn't easy. Decades of dismissal and comparison don't disappear overnight, but we're slowly learning to interact as adults rather than falling back into childhood roles. My mother actually apologized, a moment I'd waited 28 years to experience. "I failed you both," she admitted during one of our weekly coffee meetings. "I created competition instead of connection, and it nearly destroyed our family. The healing isn't complete, but we're making progress. Some relationships can be rebuilt. Others are better left buried." As for Melissa, we haven't spoken since that night. She sent a few desperate text messages in the immediate aftermath, alternating between rage, self-pity, and attempts at manipulation, but I blocked her number after the first week. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that some bridges should stay burned, that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, and that protecting my peace was more important than maintaining toxic family ties. I've learned that betrayal, while devastating, can also be liberating. It strips away illusions and forces you to see people and yourself with brutal clarity. The sister I'd loved and defended for years never actually existed. She was a carefully constructed persona designed to exploit my loyalty and compassion. Recognizing that freed me to build authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided devotion. Dating has been interesting. I'm much better at recognizing red flags now, though I'm probably more cautious than necessary. My therapist assures me this is normal and temporary, that learning to trust again takes time when your ability to judge character has been so thoroughly challenged. But I'm not bitter. That's the part that surprises people most when I tell this story. They expect anger, resentment, a desire for further revenge. Instead, I feel grateful. Grateful that the truth came out before I wasted more years on people who didn't deserve my love. Grateful for the strength I discovered in myself. Grateful for the career that emerged from chaos. Most of all, I'm grateful for the clarity. I know exactly who I am now, not the accommodating pushover who existed primarily to make others comfortable, but a woman who values herself enough to demand honesty and respect in every relationship. The wedding that was supposed to destroy me instead became my liberation day. And while I wouldn't wish that particular form of awakening on anyone, I can honestly say I'm happier now than I've ever been in my life. So here's my question for all of you amazing viewers who've stuck with me through this wild journey. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's betrayal actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise? When cruel, intentions backfired so spectacularly that they actually improved your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of humor about delivering justice, and I find those stories absolutely fascinating. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with anyone who might need to hear that surviving betrayal is possible, and sometimes it leads to something better than you ever imagined. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life drama and stories about finding strength in the darkest moments. Thank you for joining me on this journey and for all the support you've shown. Remember, family isn't always about blood, it's about finding people who genuinely value and respect you. Sometimes the greatest gift toxic people can give you is showing you exactly who they are, so you can build a life surrounded by people worthy of your love. Until next time, keep seeking truth, demanding better, and never let anyone convince you that you deserve less than genuine love and respect. Life's too short to waste on people who see your kindness as weakness rather than the strength it truly is.